All right. Thanks everybody for joining us for this week's Career and Identity Intersections. This week's topic is centered on LGBTQ plus identities as part of Pride Month. Before we get started today, we're going to go over a few virtual communal agreements just to make sure that our time together is really impactful and that you get the most out of this. Go ahead and mute your microphone if you're not one of our presenters today. That'll just make sure there's no audio issues or weird feedback loops or anything like that going on. You can feel free to turn on your closed captions. You'll see a button in the right-hand corner of your screen in order to do that. That'll just make sure you can see the text version of everything being said so you don't miss anything. You can choose as a participant to keep your video on or off. Our presenters are going to be using both audio and video today, so you can choose to go whichever route you'd like. If you have any questions for our panelists today, go ahead and drop them in the chat box so that everybody can see them. If they're super timely, we'll go ahead and address them at that time, and if not, we'll save them to the end. We are recording this presentation so that we can use it for social media use on the Career Services website and also for student diversity and social justice as needed. There's a survey for today. I'll go ahead and drop the link to that in the chat box, so no need to copy paste that or do anything weird. I'll make it really simple for you, but we would definitely appreciate your feedback on this content. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce today's moderator, Romeo Jackson. Romeo is the LGBTQ and Gender Program Coordinator for UNLV's Student Diversity and Social Justice Office, and we are very excited to have you as our facilitator today. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Romeo.
Hi, hello. I'm rocking that blue lip. I would say I saw my own picture and I was like, wow, I did that. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm super excited to be the facilitator for this panel. Many of these folks are my friends who we emailed and was like, hey, come on, do your good sis a favor. So very thankful for them for doing that. I think of most panels, like most things, as a conversation. I'm a very casual person, so be as casual as you want to be. But for me, I think having an organic conversation is always great. So we do have questions. You all can respond in very formal, structured ways, one after another, or we can have a good old key and have a conversation, kind of a little bit about how our identities have impacted our career trajectories, how we navigate our careers as LGBTQ folks. So first we want to do is, of course, turn it over to our panelists to introduce themselves. You can go in the order that's listed here. If you could just share your name, pronouns, if you use any, or want us to use any, where you currently work, what your role is, and just tell us a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like. If your day-to-day is anything like mine, then that's a hard question, but just try to be as succinct as possible. And with that, we're going to start with Quentin. Ooh, can't hear you. I'm going to move on to Tevin and then we'll circle back.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tevin Giles. I use they, she, and he pronouns. I ask that folks use them all and switch them up. I work in San Francisco, California at the SF LGBT Center as the Director of Youth Services. And so I lead a department of wonderful youth services staff who provide, who run a drop-in program, or during normal times run a drop-in program. We have one mental health specialist who provides individual therapy with us. We have a team that manages a host homes program, which matches young people to volunteers in the community who open up their homes and we provide them case management. And we also provide other housing navigation services. So working with young people experiencing homelessness and getting them matched to housing. And my day to day, kind of like Romy, I was like, okay, I hate this question because every day looks incredibly different. So as a director, I, supervise a team of managers. I also provide the support to their direct reports in a variety of ways, sometimes regularly scheduled, sometimes not. I oftentimes end up in direct service, right? Because when a member of your team needs support or when someone's out, my leadership style for me is like, okay, you got to jump in. And work a lot with our funding organizations, with other nonprofits to collaborate, and then do a lot of the boring administrative stuff like, okay, let me rewrite this grant contract or let me pull together this budget. But also, honestly, that stuff keeps us having the money to give to our young folks. So it's also important, even as it bores me.
Thank you. Thanks, Evan. Yeah, like same on the administrative end. I'd be like, wow, here's another report to get done.
Hey everyone, my name is Dustin Martinez. I use he, him pronouns. I work at Facebook, specifically in the HR department. And then within that, I'm on the offboarding team. So our team manages all of the voluntary exits that occur at Facebook in North America. And then we specifically work with the business, with legal and employee relations to offboard involuntarily when the business moves to terminate an employee. So it can be a little bit hectic sometimes. No one likes losing their job, but it's interesting to say the least. And I've been at Facebook 3 years and have been in a variety of roles. And this has been one that has kept me on my toes for sure.
Do you want me to go, or would we like Quentin to go?
Can you go ahead, go, Lance, and then we'll.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Lance L. Smith. I'm an artist, illustrator, teacher, adjunct professor at UNLV. Also, I am the artist manager of the Rogers Art Loft, which is a residency program here in Las Vegas. I can also say that my day-to-day always looks a little bit different depending on what job I'm activating. Sometimes it's behind Zoom screens. Sometimes it is, helping artists, create spaces for their projects. Sometimes it's, working at different nonprofits to support through teaching. Yeah, so that's me.
And Les is also working on putting up a show. I don't know if you want to give the girls a little. Is that a secret? Is that a secret?
Man,
oh snap!
No, we good. No, I'm playing. Yeah, I also do have an exhibition opening here in the early November at the Marjorie Baird Museum, a small exhibition of some works I created when I was in residence at Architopia in Puebla, Mexico during the height of a pandemic. So I'm excited for y'all to see them. It'll be calm, strange, and ancestral.
Oh, I loved all those adjectives. I was like, oh, that is exciting. Great. Go ahead, Quentin.
So Quentin, there's a call-in number that you can use too that was in the calendar invite. So you might want to do that. Of course, we want you to be on video, but if you want to call in, that way we can at least have you participate on audio. That would be awesome. I'm sorry for the technical problem.
Well, Quentin is a registered nurse who will introduce themselves as soon as they call in. So excited to have such a diversity of fields and kind of folks represented. And so this is super exciting. And the first place we kind of want to go is talk about a little bit just how did you arrive at your current field where you currently work? How, if any ways, did your identities inform the work, like kind of the work you're currently doing or how you currently navigated your career trajectory? So anyone can feel free to start.
Okay, I'll go ahead then. So I've been an artist since I was very young. So painting and drawing has always kind of been a mainstay in like my everyday life. So it kind of went from high school to undergrad. And then from there, I had a myriad of jobs, including artist assistant, archiving Liberace's clothing, sex working, back to teaching, a myriad of things. So to be transparent, my career trajectory is really very much informed in many ways just by my experience as a queer person and a Black person. You know what I mean? There were many times where I found myself in careers, again, that I wouldn't say I otherwise wouldn't have been in, but, you know, through the circumstances of being me wanting to be the truest version of myself, there were times where I had to get them coins, how I was able to get the coins. So now I'm at another point in my work trajectory where I'm able to kind of step into some of the more like collegiate level kind of spaces that are a little more, you know, like hoity-toity, but at the same time, I still carry the same kind of realness that I carry that if I was sex working or if I'm teaching adjunct class. That's what I have.
Okay, period. Right, like same energy. So you said like you've been doing art since you were little. Was the goal always then like to be an artist, or was it always to be a teacher who teaches art or manages art spaces, or how did that come about?
You know, I think it's a mix. Like, I think the goal, to be transparent, not to go too far into it, you know, my mother passed when I was young, and art was a very cathartic thing. So I jumped from the kind of, you know, rigmarole and sadness of that into art. So it was always something I was going to do regardless. And so from there, and I also used to teach Sunday school, you know, but it was just arts and crafts, but it was my way of navigating. Again, we learn to protect ourselves. I knew that if I got the praise and worship, I could cry, have all the good feelings, and then go do arts and crafts. So you don't potentially have to navigate the kind of problematic notions of, you know, Abrahamic faiths and me going straight to the dark side because of who I am naturally. So I think that is where like that kind of teaching kind of happened. And then from there, I worked with different institutions like the SPRAT organization, which is where we teach teenagers and elders. We bring them together. And so I just saw that teaching is like a way to really bridge that gap, because I know for me, I would not be alive if it wasn't for the teachers that, you know, touched and pushed and held space and held me accountable. So I think it's almost like a kind of pay it forward thing for like the kind of managing things. Like there's no way in anybody's nirvana or up or down that I wouldn't, you know, stand here and assist if I could, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Quentin, if you're ready, feel free to introduce yourself and then also kind of respond to the career trajectory question if you like.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Don't know what's going on. So my name is Quentin Bolden. I use he, him, his pronouns. And then the other question was about career. I'm currently a registered nurse in Dallas at Baylor University Medical Center, located in Dallas. It's a level 1 trauma center. And I specifically specialize in intensive care with oncology patients and bone marrow transplant. So I get the sickest of the sickest oncology babies. And with bone marrow transplants, those are people, we've tried a lot of modalities of treatment and nothing has worked. So they just get to hopefully just chill with us for 3 weeks. And then if things don't go well, sometimes it can be an endpoint for them where we do comfort care, or we've had patients stay with us well over 100 days and they walk out of here and say, bye, not coming back over it. And I work nights, so if I'm off, it's just, I worked last night and I took a nap. Sorry. So how I arrived here is just very strange, because originally, and I think this is important for students to know, because we don't really talk enough about financial impact and how it's okay to have one career that feeds you so that you can have a career later that you love. I feel like a lot of people really tell PLC students just to follow their dreams and queer students just to follow their dreams. But I'm like, there's not always coin in my beginning dream, and I'm starving now and I need hormone replacement therapy now. So I wanted to originally go to medical school, but I have a grandma to take care of all these different things. So I ended up going to nursing school first, because I was like, you know what? Instead of debt, how about no debt and a house and putting grandma on some Louis, and then we'll go get in debt. And my typical night is, since I'm a nurse, there is no typical night. So I'm in and I can have crashing patients. I can have patients that are completely fine, and we talk and we play on their putting greens, for example. And then I've had days where I've had to really navigate and advocate for my patients and help them to go on to that transition to the next part of life, which is the end of it on the plane. So it's a very fulfilling job, but it is very taxing. I have done some research, and basically sometimes I show up and they're like, you get to clock in early because we're about to intubate this man now. We don't have enough hands. And I'm like, So that's about how it goes on night shift. So it's a wonderful job. I can answer any and all questions, and nursing is a more like typically professional job. So for a lot of you that are concerned about how will I look when I present to people, what should I do, since healthcare tends to be more conservative, like I can answer any questions that I have experience with. And thank you all for being patient with me, since none of my technology wants to work. It's Zoom tired too. It's okay.
Well, I'm so thankful that you joined us after your night shift. I really appreciate it. And it seems like folks really resonated with this idea of kind of following your dreams and also providing for yourself, which I agree, I think is a lot of conversations I have with students. So they're like, how do I follow my dreams and provide for myself? Like, and how we authentically navigate that, right? And live lives that are fulfilling and happy, which I think includes being able to financially support ourselves and often our families as well, right? As people within our networks that often may be seen as having the success. So I'm definitely going to circle back to that in a little bit once we get through these career trajectory questions. And Tevin and Dustin, please feel free if you want to comment on that beforehand too, because I think that's very rich. So you can go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Quentin and Lance. I can definitely sympathize with that. I wanted to go to UT out of high school. I was accepted. I was the top 10% of my class, but my parents were like, we don't have money to send you to UT, so you're going to go to community college for the first 2 years, and then you can go to UT to finish it out. And I was like, oh God, I really want to go. But then, understanding that aspect of it, went to community college. It didn't work quite well. So I actually I enlisted in the Navy, and I spent 6 years in the Navy as a military police officer and went to various duty stations, and it really grounded me, and it really gave me a trajectory to what I wanted to do with life. My first duty station was in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. I was a prison guard there. My next duty station was in Sicily, Italy for 2 years, and I was a military police officer. And then I finished out my Navy career in the Seattle area, where I was a nuclear weapons instructor for guarding nuclear weapons. So I got to teach like my students on how to guard weapons. And then I got out of the military. I thought I wanted to be in law enforcement, and that wasn't like the trajectory I wanted. And I literally looked on like Bureau of Labor Statistics and like what's like decent paying job that's always going to be for sure. And HR person was always up there. So I got my foot into that. I started working at the Texas Attorney General's office in HR. And that's what brought me to Austin. So was there for 4 years. And while I was going to grad school, after grad school, I got a job offer at a smaller tech company. And then eventually I got a job offer at Facebook. And that's what's landed me here. So I've been all over the place and had a lot of different experiences, but it's definitely, they've all been really great experiences.
And in terms of, so I mean, I was never in the military, nor am I HR professional, but I'm assuming that's a transition kind of between the work you were doing. How was that transition? Like, how did you handle that transition?
I mean, I like I said, I thought I wanted to do law enforcement, but then when I got out, I was like, man, I'm done with it. I'm sick of it. I wanted something. I still love working with people, and the HR field is you work with people all the time, different backgrounds, different everything. So I kind of was in the same space, but not like being on the law enforcement side where you have to be like, always constantly like vigilant and aware.
Hey, thank you. Bring us home, Tevin.
Hi again, everyone. So I'm going to try and give y'all the Spark Notes version because the long version of this story I need a drink for. So I was a young person who had like a very clear strategic plan for their life. And a lot of y'all know that life don't about your plans. And so as a young person, I was planning to go to college, for political science. I was planning to go to law school and get a dual degree, get a JD and a master's in public policy. I wanted to then wanted to clerk for a Supreme Court justice, work at a top law firm, do that for a little while, and then run for office. Like, there were steps, there was years, there were benchmarks. And after my freshman year of college, life said, ooh, boo, you forgot that you got healing to do before you can do anything else. My first year of college was a challenging experience, and I ended up on academic recess. Being on academic recess, and at the time being pretty disconnected from my family, I ended up experiencing homelessness. And most of that homelessness for me was couch surfing. A little bit of it was there were some nights on the street. There was some having to do what young people have to do to survive. I was also kind of in and out of the hospital at the time for my mental health. And one therapist that I worked with was like, you are so amazing with people. And like, we have to figure out how to get you re-engaged with community. I think that you need to find somewhere to volunteer. And I'm like, okay, whatever, you're the professional. Let me do that. And so I started volunteering at an LGBT center in Michigan. I'm originally from Detroit, called Affirmations. And I quickly felt at home. And I realized at the time that I didn't know that youth programs covered people up to like 21 or 24. So I was 20 at the time, and they were like, come to our youth program. And I felt seen and validated. I ended up interning and volunteering there, being a part of the youth program. I went back to college for one cute little semester. It was my most academically successful semester also. And I was like, I hate it here. I hate everything that this represents. Like, I always thought that this was for me, but this actually isn't for me. And can I be successful without having to deal with this? And I got that call from Affirmations, and they're like, we got an open position, we want you. And I was like, bye, that's a coin. So I started my career there. I was a youth program coordinator for about a year and a half. Running a drop-in program that was mostly just about fun and joy, and then also some leadership development and workforce development programs. I eventually was like, I want to be somewhere else. And I ended up moving out to Chicago and working at Howard Brown Health, which is an LGBT health center in Chicago. And I was doing case management with survivors of sexual violence. And I'm also a survivor. And my experience as a survivor was really a huge part of what created some of my mental health challenges in college. And so I really enjoyed that work. I was there for about 2 years. I was able to help create that program, which is like expanded so much since I left. And I started to find myself saying like, actually, and I realized that like, actually, there's a new way forward for me. I don't have to keep thinking of this as my temporary or my plan B. This can be my plan A. And actually, I'm going to run for office without any degree. And baby, guess who's going to get elected? And so then I decided I was ready for management and to be in nonprofit leadership, which led me out here to the LGBT Center in San Francisco. I really enjoy being able to reflect on my lived experience and knowing that the programs that really allowed me to like shift my life are the ones that I'm also trying to expand and give back to this community. And I really see that connection and that importance, and just love being with young people and hearing their stories and working with them to see that there are so many paths forwards for them, and not just one that they felt like was set for them by others or that they kind of envisioned for themselves.
Just love that. And particularly love that because I think even a lot of the students that we work with are now even thinking like they have to get graduate degrees, right? Like it's like, I have to go get a grade. I'm like, oh my God, like you probably don't, right? More likely than not, right? You probably don't. And I think it's so awesome to hear how you have really been able to ascend into this nonprofit leadership role. And as your friend done it so beautifully, right? By charting your own path. I'm kind of interested, you mentioned a shift from it being maybe a backup plan to the plan A. how did you recognize that, or like what was that shift like? Because I think, and I'll speak for myself, I think I even tend to get like, I've mapped out my life and this is what it will be, but it seems like you've had to adjust and shift that. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
It was a journey, and it took a few years. One of the things that attracted me to the job at Howard Brown is that they have tuition reimbursement. And the plan at the time was to go back to college to continue back, right, to the original plan. And while I was working, I think I was doing actually a similar sort of thing with a group of social work students, and they were master's level social work students. Talking to them about the LGBT community and sexual violence. And they were reflecting on all the things that they hated about being in academia. They were like really confused that I was in the type of position that they were looking to get into once they graduated. And some of them were a little bit condescending, I'll be honest. And I realized that I was teaching them so much and offering so much to them that they were reflecting that their programs weren't. And I was like, why the fuck do I plan on going back to school if I feel like I have what I need? And that shit costs a whole bunch of money. And there's nothing about it that brings me personally joy. And I know a lot of people who have a lot of joy in academia, love that for them. Don't fully understand, but support them. Romeo knows this because I'd be like, girl, really? Okay. And so then I was like, well, Tevin, you've been doing well so far. Like, can you readjust this? And I also was doing more and more community organizing. And I think that I started to see, like, when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who does have a degree, ran for office on a fairly progressive platform and won and received all this media attention, I was like, you know what? Like, my community will actually support me regardless of a degree. And the people who see my value and that I actually want to work for, they don't care about that. They care about like being seen and getting their needs met and living in a more equitable world and having a more equitable future. And so I started to really feel like actually that's what's important to people. That's what's important to me. And that's what I'm going to focus on.
So powerful. I'm going to shift us a bit into the next section around employer dynamics, kind of hearing a bit about career trajectory, and kind of being in your, like, now protect your job and your energy if that's important for you. So I want y'all getting fired for anything else on this panel. But I'm wondering how your identities have kind of impacted not only the type of work you do, but in terms of your employer search, in terms of something that your employer does or did do when you were kind of being recruited or hired that kind of said to you, oh, this may be a place that kind of affirms my identity. Or if you're like, that wasn't important for me, I was trying to make a bag, like that's also real, right? So that's also an important factor. So like, if you're like, none of that mattered to me, like I think we'll love to hear that as well. I want to start with Quentin to kind of jump us off on that piece.
Okay, so one of the things I didn't include in my career trajectory is I have had other jobs, but if we're going to focus on just nursing career jobs, nurses now are required to go through a nurse residency. So it's like a 1-year program, and not necessarily the whole year do they follow you around, but it's more so those critical first 3 months. You do a lot of workshops, you do a lot of talk, and then let me be quite honest, a bunch of it's just for people to get magnet, because the older nurses know that it's about the bag, it's about caring for your patients, and these hospitals want magnet status, and you have to have so many nurses doing like research or quality improvement projects, and they really get their GNs to do it. It's free labor, so I don't like that. And they can hear that I don't like that. Because the training truly, if you already know how to deal with people because you've been outside, or like how some of us have had to be involved in sex work, or we've been involved with, being sexually assaulted or having to do that kind of growth. We have people skills already. I don't need you to teach me how to tell a patient you can't be racist towards me because, honey, it's not happening. I got your Dilaudid in my hand. This makes no sense. So my previous job, I was there for 6 months, and then I left. I didn't leave without securing other employment at the current job that I'm at. But the reason why I'm going to say this is important is that so many students, like Tevin was pointing out, are really, 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 really entrenched in this societal ideas of academia and what it looks like to progress in your job. And the nurse residency and the way that it's set up, it would really make you think that unless you stay at the current job you sign a contract with for 2 years, you won't get another job. I was like, there's a lot of patient violence going on here. There's a lot of staff related violence from patients and from administration, and it's not supportive, it's not safe. I was like, so I'm going to have to transition to another environment. And they literally kind of laughed in my face because of my disabilities and said, you know, I wouldn't get another job. And when I hit that 6 month mark, applying in the bathroom, taking phone interviews in the break room at work, because I don't care, I landed another job, right? And what affected me looking for a job outside of my identity was me really, after having my first job and seeing what kind of support I needed, what type of environment I wanted, and the type of values I wanted on my unit. That's the kind of stuff I started asking in my job interviews, because no matter what type of job you have, you all, they all have these very generic, unless it's a very small organization, very generic posts about just degree requirements and like the HR basically outline of your job function, but it doesn't really tell you anything. Right. So sometimes you have to have a good or a bad job or whatever first to know what to ask in subsequent interviews. And for me, since I live in Texas and you can get gay married and gay fired, what I sat down and did was I started while I was in nursing school looking through hospitals at the time I lived in Houston in the Texas Medical Center that did offer like gender identity and expression in their non-harassment policies. So I started there and I applied to those facilities first. And then, you know, if I was to move to another city, I would look at the city's rules or the state's rules. But that's the biggest thing I would have to say. Like for me, since I'm not far in my career, I would not feel safe choosing a job where I did not have those protections written down, just because, look, I take care of people. I deal with racist patients. I deal with transphobic and homophobic patients. I deal with lots of those things, and I need a management that even if they don't want to back me up, they have to. Because I'm sorry, but a lot of these people, if they don't feel like their behind's going to be in the fire, they won't. And for diversity and inclusion, I just feel like we really just attract a bunch of different types of people to my unit, because oncology is a very empathetic field. So we're diverse kind of by default, because they really do try to bring in, like, our team is lacking someone who's really good with empathy at night. So they'll try to hire a person that they feel like can do that. The one that'll sit in the room and read a book to the patient that is going off the wall. It's like, honey, you're not on this planet. We gonna read Hop on Pop, Green Eggs and Ham, whatever. You know, so that's truly what I did. And for me, since I needed to choose a specialty, it was about truly searching where I had been in life and seeing what I wanted to give back, because I also am working on like a nonprofit right now. I'm very passionate about queer competent sexual education and teaching providers how to communicate with queer people, because they actually do want to, because there are people our age in medical school. They still teach in medical school like we're in 1932, and it's terrible. And nursing school too, like they're blatantly racist and homophobic and like just heteronormative, very destructive things that we're still taught. And nursing has progressed to where it's seen as a white collar job, even though we're truly blue collar workers if you're on the bedside. So you have a lot of more white, affluent, younger women getting into it, and they don't have that background and life experience to deal with homeless patients, patients with psychiatric issues. And what I always love to say is that we're trained to take care of like suburban soccer moms, and their moms are suburban soccer moms. So when they come out, they have this complete inability to empathize on how to communicate with patients. And it can actually cause communication issues where care becomes compromised. So I wanted to be there to be able to be the one that's like, you know, your grandma's dying. I'm here for you. And when she passes, she's going to get that church lady swoop. I got you. So that's what was important for me as I was looking for another job moving forward from my residency.
Thank you. Right. So there was some pieces around like kind of policies of the employer itself, some city, state, maybe laws and protections. but then also really factors in how you wanted to give back and provide that level of patient care. I thought great. Dustin, do you want to respond to this question around how your identities impact how you looked for employers, questions you asked, how you search for positions?
Yeah, no. So I came out of the closet when I was 17, high school still. So me joining the military my parents were just like absolutely freaked out because Don't Ask, Don't Tell was still in full effect. I went into the military knowing that I could very well be fired for being myself. And I was very hesitant. Each new duty station I went to, I kind of was undercover until I got my footing and grounding on and feel for people around me, and then I would start to open up little by little. So each place I would go to would be the same like process, is just getting to know people, letting them know me, and then opening up. I never really had an issue in the military. My last 3 years in Seattle, I worked with a bunch of Marines, and that's where I had made a couple of issues. I got called a faggot, but I stood my ground. I from anybody, and I was just like, hey man, I have your back, you have my back, we're going to war. I'm going to die for you. I would hope you would die for me, no matter what what our sexuality is. So the military taught me a lot about like just being able to be who you are, and it's full of like it's a very diverse organization in general. There's people from all walks of life, from all parts of the country, coming together to work together. So I think at the end of the day, they put a lot of those views aside and just like focus on the mission. And then when I worked at the Attorney General's office, was very conservative organization as well. But I got to know my director, I got to know the people around me, and it just opened up little by little. And from there went into tech. And now that I'm at Facebook, like our first day at new hire orientation, they tell you like, be your authentic self, be whoever you want to be. They try to be as inclusive as possible. We have a bunch of employee resource groups, Black at, Latin at, Women at, Pride at. And there's a lot of intersectionality that happens within those groups, and the business and the company. And I feel like my management team and leadership teams really push for that inclusion and acceptance of everybody, no matter what you are and who you identify as.
During the interview or recruitment process, was there anything you kind of asked or anything that came up during that process that signaled to you that Facebook was that type of place? Or was it like you got to orientation and you were like, oh, this is a nice surprise?
So literally, like in one of my interviews with the hiring managers, they had like a Pride shirt on, and that sparked a conversation. And it just made me feel so welcome that they would have a T-shirt on in an interview that just showed like they were inclusive and accepting of everybody. And that's the hiring manager that actually like called me and was like, hey, we're gonna offer you the role, blah blah blah. I was so excited, and to this day I have a really close relationship with that person.
Oh, nice. Love that. So here there were some pieces around kind of filling the room is important. I would encourage folks to do that. It's like, regardless of what's in writing, fill the room a little bit, know what's happening. And then there was this visual representation piece around the Pride shirt.
Yeah.
Great, cool. All right. Tony, you want to go ahead and then we'll wrap up with Lance. Also, for folks who are here, like, get your questions ready because we're going to open it up for open Q&A. I do have more questions, but I would love to shut up and allow y'all to ask questions. So please get those ready after Tevin and Lance are finished. Go ahead, Tevin.
So my current employer and my last two employers were LGBT organizations. And also, right? Like, so there's an assumption, but there's an and also. Because even within a lot of LGBT organizations, Black folks and trans folks, non-binary folks aren't always feeling the same love and level of inclusiveness. And that was, in my first workplace, it wasn't so much of a problem. We were pretty small. The staff at the time were just wonderful and very inclusive. That was kind of dependent on the person. There wasn't enough in writing to protect some of that, but it was still a really great environment for me to start off working in. And my second employer, also really great. There were things that they needed to learn. I think that they're doing some learning. But I also, after my first job and after just a lot of the realizing of like, I need to be healthy in a work environment or else I can't work, right? I can't take a job that I'm not going to be able to go to because everything's going to be thrown out. So I have to like take stock of what are some of my must-haves, because like my mental health is going to break down, then my physical health is going to break down if I don't get certain things out of a workplace. And so I was like, how do I start to screen them in my interviews? So for one, I'm going to wear gym shoes in an interview. And if you have a problem with it, that's your problem, because I don't want to work for you anyway. And I know that about myself. And I encourage you as college students to think about even little things like that. If you're like, I want to be able to wear gym shoes at work, go to the interview with gym shoes. They might not hire you because of that, but like, if you're okay with that, then do it. I tell queer and trans people all the time, regardless of where they are, if you want to be able to wear makeup or earrings or any of these things in your job, if that is important for you and you would turn down a job if they don't let you, then go like that to your interview. And honestly, in a lot of ways, for your health and well-being, it might be better to have them not hire you and like have your community support you in finding something that fits you better. Which, not going to say it isn't hard, right? Like, we know it is. And also, I know that there are queer and trans folks like here in this panel, but also all around the world who will be happy to support you in finding something that does work for you. You know, in each of my job exploration stages, I applied for a lot of organizations that weren't LGBT specific. So doing youth work in other environments, particularly with youth of color. I also, at one point, I was a candidate for a position with Chicago Public Schools, which I was really excited about. And I asked hard questions. I asked really clearly, what are your non-discrimination policies? Can you tell me how you support queer and trans staff members? Like, how do you deal with conflict when it comes up in this workplace? And if I didn't like their answers, sometimes I rejected some people. And I think, you know, I think a lot of folks don't feel like they have the power to do that. And for sometimes we're going for survival, and that makes a lot of sense. And also, I think I want everyone to reach a place where they like are able to turn down an employer too. Because like, once again, your health and your wellness is incredibly important. In my current workplace, I think it is, and it helps that I'm in leadership, of course, but I think it's the environment that has felt the most inclusive for me. We're doing, and of course we still have challenges, right? We are doing a racial equity plan to get better about how we deal with racial equity within our organization and within our programs. But for me, it is the ability to challenge people and have them sit, think, and be collaborative and change that really, really matters. Like my executive director is white and is cis. She is queer. But if I say, yo, Rebecca, I think we need to talk about this because it's not working well or it's having this impact, Rebecca's going to be like, let's talk about this and let's see what we can change. And that matters to me because none of us are going to be perfect. And the truth is, like, as people of color, we all have our own growth to make around racial equity. As trans people, we have our own growth to make on how we work with and treat other trans people. So for me, it's really about like, can I engage you in conflict and you show up and we work on a solution together? And I try to see that in my interviews with different organizations as well. Like, how are you going to work with me if I bring a challenge to you?
Yeah, I loved all of that, Tevin. And those nuggets about the dress kind of and showing up, where like if you want to wear jeans and a t-shirt every day, then like showing to the interview like that lets you know, which for me is also important to know what are your boundaries and must-haves, right? So like some of those things we may be flexible with, but it's like I'm with you, like I'm wearing jeans to work every day. So if I can't do that, I don't need to be here. right? Like that's what I want to wear. Also this piece around turning down offers and kind of, you know, knowing like what that means. Like you don't need to accept every offer you get, which is hard when we're, you know, sometimes are often in survival mode or been taught as marginalized people to take whatever we can get, right? Like particularly if it's like if the pay's right or like if the title's right. So I appreciate those two nuggets. I'm gonna wrap it up with Lance. Folks can feel free to drop their questions in the chat. You can also unmute once Lance is finished. So we're gonna go ahead and have Lance response.
Hey, I really love all the commentary from everyone, Devin, Dustin, Quentin. My last position, speaking of dress, as a person under the trans umbrella, non-binary, whatever, I wore a suit every day for almost 5 years, and that was a part of my job description, right? And it was really, I don't know, it was like I was going through a time in the arts, if you will. Sometimes it's harder to get into these spaces, especially in spaces like Las Vegas where there aren't as many opportunities. So it was very much a kind of giving up of myself in order to get into this space, right? And I was also coming off of the tail end of, being housing displaced. And so it was like, I'm going to get into this space and get everything that I can at the moment. But after a while, for many years, it was really hard. And I really appreciate what Tevin talks about really showing up. Maybe I would have showed up with a lash or a little bit of beat just to see what, right? So I think now, having come out of that and understanding that, having wore that really binary kind of suit and literally describing it as drag every day, right? Knowing that now from here on out, anywhere I go, I will never, betray you, if you will, my heart in that way for the sake of, kind of security, right? Because what is that security if your heart ain't right? You know what I mean? So it's just really beautiful to kind of hear these kind of the conversations. And for the jobs I'm in now, working at the Rogers Art Loft and with UNLV, the spaces, they don't bat lash if I have on a lash. You know what I mean? Like, so, and that is a beautiful thing, like to just come into the space, femme, cause no shade, we can push them up, you know what I mean? So you can carry yourself and fashion yourself in whatever way edifies that the deepest part of your spirit. And so I think one of the things I want to tell any of the folks listening or that are going to listen later is don't betray your heart. Be versatile, but not to the point of shrinking yourself, right? I think us as queer people know we're all like Mystique, honey. You have to know how to hit, how to shift our language, our mannerisms. We know when we walk into a room, can we or do we need to, you know what I mean? So like, understand that is, for me in my head, that is our power, right? Is understanding that intersectionality and being able to, shift with literally the wind, right? So yeah, I don't want to take up too much time because I know we have questions, but just, be intentional about the spaces you apply to. And also just, again, that feeling, right? What feels right to you and, what versions of yourself do you want to edify, right? You don't want to have to go into a space and have to shut down a deep part of yourself in order to go through that every day. So yeah, that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And just that piece around where kind of once like you're in an environment that you can feel like you can show up maybe closer to who you are or who you want to be, it's hard to go back.
Never going back.
Right. I feel so much of that. Great. So Lynn has a question around for folks who are entering like entry-level roles or it's their first job after college, what tips do you have for them to be able to advocate for resources or support that they need as members of LGBTQ communities or communities of color or both of those communities, particularly like with power in mind, right? So maybe structurally they're not in a place, right, within your organization for those things. So what kind of advice would you have?
My answer to that really is you have more power than you think, because the people who are hiring you are in management, and management's never in demand when straight up they don't have a job opening open because they don't need someone to fulfill that role, period. And I think the biggest mistake that a lot of students have, especially those of us who are disadvantaged, like I was homeless too, my grandparents took me in, is that we really believe we need to wait until we arrive at a place to start thinking about that place. Okay, so if you're thinking about a career, I'm going to use specific language when I say career job. It's not to say that other jobs are not important. It's just we're talking about a career space, because I truly believe career is whatever you do with your life, your career, if you are a fishing hobbyist, enthusiast, that's a part of your career, because I believe career involves our life and who we are. And it's all encompassing because we bring it with us to work, right? So I believe that the biggest thing for you is, before you're applying, before you even know what you're interested in, you need to start looking around at the campus you're on, because that is a lot of resources that you even could bring to your job. And by that, I just mean that a lot of jobs they haven't had people like us. So they don't know. Not everybody is malicious. Some people are just ignorant and they don't have the people on the inside to bring that information in. So even if it's like a PowerPoint that you got from one of these types of seminars or different things like that, sometimes folks are open to that conversation. But even if they're not, that's why knowing your HR policies are so important, because an HR professional sometimes can bring that sort of thing in. And at my previous job, HR did come in and did have a meeting with our upper management and said, the job that you're doing is not sufficient, and fired them all. So then everybody was happy after that, which is why I'm like, you have to advocate for yourself. You have to speak up. And Romeo, we talked about this at my previous job. They were like, these white folks don't care unless it's in writing. You need to summarize your meetings, copy everybody on the email. If you need to blind copy the chief nursing, you do that. Professional work is shady. Straight up. So you need, if you're not one who used to record or used to write things out, you need to. And it's very important to reach up and reach behind. So if you're a junior, reaching out to a freshman, and if you're someone who's going into the workforce, or you have gone into it and you've seen some of these things and you've learned the pitfalls, reach back, which is why I'm doing a lot of these panels, because I realize a lot of disadvantaged students just don't know what to do. And a lot of our peers who came from upper middle class environments, they've been groomed for how to go into a job environment, how to advocate for themselves since childhood. You know, so that's mainly what I would say. The biggest thing is just doing what you can while you are where you're at, because you won't really know exactly what you need to say or what you need to do until you're there, because like Kevin said, it's very personal what you need and what your boundaries are. Okay, like I wore a turtle tie and a pink shirt to my interview, and I also didn't wear pants. I let them know I'm not wearing pants because we're on video, and that's childish. You leave me alone.
I love that. Thank you. Would anyone else like to respond? Probably gonna do one more person and then try to take one more question before we wrap up. Nope. Okay. We can also just move on. That's true. Oh,
really quickly, read the website, look on Glassdoor, read people's reviews, believe the reviews, take them at face value. You know, look for people in the field. If you know any people that work at an agency or a corporation, ask about their experience, you know, all of those things. And then I think the biggest thing that I would recommend is find a mentor within your field, someone within the field that you're hoping to go to, who you feel like reflects your values, and try and cultivate a mentorship relationship with them, because that will also be key in helping you really understand some of the specifics to like how you can advocate for yourself within that like field. So as much as possible. So that means like reach out to folks like Romeo and Lynn, who might be able to connect you and be great resources in getting connected to mentors. Like y'all are welcome to get my email address if you're looking to go into social services or youth work. Like I'm happy to support, because hearing those people's stories and you being able to learn from them will probably be more effective than anything that like is in writing about like what queer and trans people deal with in the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else have any questions? Probably have time for one question and one response before we kind of wrap up. And we're gonna give a couple beats. All right. Seeing any. So in closing, I was kind of thinking it would be great to kind of conclude with each panelist just going around and maybe sharing a piece of advice they would give to their younger selves or their selves entering their first job or first career job path. What would you say to you, or what do you wish someone had said to you at that critical juncture for our wrap up? And we can do Dustin, Lance, Tevin, and Quentin in that order to wrap us up.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me. I'd say to my younger self, like, don't be afraid to take a jump. When I was getting out of the military, my boss told me, it was in the heart of the recession. He's like, you're not going to be able to do anything. The only thing you're going to be able to do is dig ditches. I took that to heart. It got me really down. But I didn't take that as like an end all. Just don't think of yourself that you could do anything. Like, don't ever like doubt yourself.
So yeah, again, I want to say thank you all for having me as well. Oh God, my younger self. Hold on. It's gonna be wild, 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 wild. But all the things that you go through are gonna prime you to help change the lives of folks that need it. So don't give up, even though you're gonna try a couple times and almost get there. Keep going. Yeah.
I would say jobs, organizations, corporations, think of them like a community, and think of yourself as a person who can be in that community if you want, and can find another community if you need to. And know that, like, sometimes we are a part of a community for a period of time and not always. And when I thought of it that way, it felt a lot easier to advocate for myself, but also to leave and know that there is going to be another community that might be better able to support me.
You the last one, Quentin.
Okay, so younger self. In the wise words of my grandma, it truly. Because she said the best thing you can know, because they're also religious, my grandparents, and then my grandpa recently passed, so blessings to him. We won't get into him. Lord. He did he had a rags to bitches story, okay? We're going to leave that alone. But they're very religious. They're both ministers. And one of the biggest things they said is, like, they would quote, my grandfather would quote from Romans, like renewing your mind. So look, every day before you go into these workspaces, renew your mind, let things go, have healthy boundaries, learn how to relax before going in, and knowing when you need to seek out help, because some of us will not have mental health issues until we enter into the job space. And it's okay to need therapy. It's okay to need medication. It's okay to use FMLA. And it's okay to pay for short-term and long-term disability, because nothing better than being on the couch being sad but getting paid to be sad while you process. Okay, so know your benefits. And if you bad at that, get you a grown-up that knows. And the other thing is, like Tevin said, my grandma always said, if your hands are closed trying to hold on to something, your hands are not open to receive. Be okay with letting go. Because even in jobs that you love or roles that you love, just like with Dustin, it's sometimes time to transition. Just like how they were in the military and they thought they wanted to transition into police work, because a lot of people, that's a very natural transition. It wasn't there for them. Just like for me, I felt, one of the things I felt was a big loss that I really want to tell my younger self is, don't let go of the things that make you right now, to continue to progress professionally, whatever that means, because I am the professional, whatever that is. They need my creative writing skills, just like how they need me to know how to interpret an ABG, and just to keep all those parts a part of you. If a job isn't good for you anymore, you can apply in the bathroom. What they gonna do? Nothing. You can accept a job just for the bag, and if you're not comfortable with it, guess what? Collecting paychecks and start searching for jobs in orientation. I do it every day. I'm the worst. So I would just tell myself, let things go and be okay with letting go of who you thought you were going to be, the jobs you thought that would be a good fit, and just go with what's going on right now.
Wow, 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 wow. I have to give it up. This is as awesome as I was hoping it would be. Thank you all so much for being so gracious with your time, so open and honest. I really, I feel inspired. I was like, wow, let me jot mine down. I got notes. I was like, let me take some of these notes. There's both our departments' contact information if you need us. And please join me in giving a round of applause to our great panelists. I want to extend an offer to each one of you. Like, I would be happy to engage with you or your organizations if anything we do at UNLV can ever be helpful. Would be super happy to collaborate. So just let us know. And I don't know if Lynn has anything in closing. Do the survey. Surveys are important. Surveys let us know if we did a good job or need to adjust. And if there's something else,